Good morning. Welcome to Kings at Home Daily. My name is Steve, one of the leaders based up at City West. If you're new, if you're looking from outside, then we're a church that meet in Norwich, based across 3 locations across the city. And I'm one of the leaders based up at City West, just around the corner from my home here. And during this time, we're just putting together these daily videos, weekdays, just to feed and encourage the church during this time. And I hope you find these really useful. It's been great preparing them, actually. Just really enjoyed spending time in the Word and preparing so often, so it's been good. Now we're going through the book of Ephesians, so if you have a Bible, why don't you head there, and we're actually right at the end of chapter 1, and I'm going to read verses 22 and 23. And God placed all things under his feet, and appointed him to be head over everything for the church, which is his body, the fullness of him who fills everything in every way. Talking about Jesus there. And I just want to rewind a little bit, a few verses there. We see from verse 16 onwards that Paul is praying for his readers. And it's interesting, he prays verses sort of 17 onwards about that they would know Jesus better, that his readers would know him better. He says, I pray that the eyes of your heart may be enlightened, that you may know the hope to which he has called you, you may know the glorious inheritance, and so on. And it's interesting that's what he prays. For Paul, those things are obviously critical, really important. You know, he doesn't pray that, I pray you'd be well, I pray you'd have everything that you need, and you'd be healthy and so on. No, he prays that you may know him better, that the eyes of your heart may be enlightened, that you'd know the hope to which he has called you, his glorious inheritance, and so on. He prays these things. So Paul obviously believes these things to be more important, more important than anything else. And so we need to take this seriously. And it could, in reading this, when you get to verse sort of 22 onwards that I read a moment ago, you kind of think, well, perhaps Paul, he started speaking about these wonderful things and this prayer, and sometimes for us when we're praying, our minds can wander off, and we can just sort of get caught up in the moment praying about things, and you can think, well, maybe that's what Paul was doing here. Maybe when he started talking about, in verse 22, God placed all these things under his feet and appointed him to be head of the church, you could think, well, yes, those are true, but Paul's just got caught up in his prayer, and he's just sort of wandered off into these truths about God and Jesus and what he's done for us, he's sort of lost his trail of thought. You could think that was the case, but it's actually a continuation. And if you see how it pieces together, how it fits together, then these last 2 verses aren't just sort of a wandering of Paul's thoughts or his mind, but they fit wonderfully together with what's gone before, beautifully. And when you see that, it's a beautiful thing when you see how it fits in. And I want to try and help us to do that in our time, our short time this morning. And I want to pick up on this image split between verses 22 and 23. That's of the head and the body. That's a theme we see used a lot in the New Testament. We see it in Romans, in 1 Corinthians. We see this theme of the body, and I want to just pick up on that the head and the body. That's that theme of Jesus Christ, the head, us, the body, and just without pushing the metaphor too far, I want to really just explore that in our time this morning. And what's interesting, first of all, is that the first thing that you think of with the head and the body is you can't separate the two, can you? You know, if you can't separate my head from my body, and they're united, they're joined. And in the same way that my head is joined and united to my body, so we as Christians, as followers of Jesus, are united to Jesus. There's an intimate, organic, vital connection between my body, my head, and my body. So the same is true for the believer and Jesus. It's not some sort of loose connection, is it? It's not it's not a loose connection. It's a permanent connection. It's not on and off. It's not. I don't sort of my head doesn't come off and come back on. It's a permanent connection, and it's not. It doesn't depend on my performance. It doesn't depend on my feelings. My head is still connected to my body. So the same is true for the follower of Jesus. We're still connected to Jesus. It doesn't depend on our feelings, on our performance, how well we feel we've done. We are still just as strongly connected to Jesus, connected to him. And it's a wonderful work of the Spirit. It's not by our own endeavour, it's not by our own ability, it's a wonderful work of the Spirit. And just pondering a bit more on that image of the head, of course it speaks about authority and government, but it's the kind of the center of a person, isn't it? And the force, and the brain, and so it is the center and life of the church. And isn't that a wonderful relief, especially as someone who's in church leadership, that Jesus is the head of the church. Jesus is the center and life force of his church. And but also we know just in terms of biology and so on, there's nerves throughout our bodies, aren't there, that connect back to our brain. We're all connected. The whole body, all the parts of the body are connected to the head. And again, without stretching the image too far, like this morning, I got out of bed and stubbed my little toe of all things, and of course you know about it right away. And even a small toe can send a big signal, a big pain back to the head, and the head knows about it. And so when we suffer, when we are in as members of Jesus' body, when we suffer, when we're going through trials and pain and difficulty, he knows about it. He feels it. He suffered himself. He knows what it is like to suffer. And the other thought is that it's the same life in the body, isn't it? That life it comes from the head, and it's the same life in all parts of the body. It's not as though my hand has got a different part to my foot. It's the same part, the same life in all parts of the body. And so, what does this mean? What does this mean for our relationship to Jesus? Because that's what Paul is trying to do. He's using this illustration of the head and the body because he wants us to understand our position, our inheritance, our relationship to Jesus. He wants us to understand that we're partakers of the divine nature. And if we understand this, if we understand that we're connected to Jesus by this permanence, this vital, strong link that's not dependent on our performance, it's not dependent on our feelings or how well we've done. If we understand our position because of what Jesus did at the cross for us, that we're now united to him, we're in him, we're connected to him, not a loose connection but a strong connection. If we understand that, then verses like in John that says things like, apart from me you can do nothing, they begin to make sense. And in Philippians, again, in Philippians 4, I can do all things through him who strengthens me, because Jesus is the head. That's how we can make sense of some of those things. And so today, amongst all of the difficulty, amongst all of the suffering that is going on, the uncertainty, remind yourself, I may be a small, weak, flawed member of the body, but I am a member of the body. I am in him. The life of the head is in me, and I am connected. I am in touch with Jesus. That's what Paul wants us to understand. That's how it fits into this prayer, because that's why he prays, I want you to, that your eyes of your heart may be enlightened to know the hope to which he has called you, the riches of his glorious inheritance. Paul wants our eyes to be open to the fact that we're in Jesus, that we're connected to Jesus, not just some great power source that we occasionally connect to. No, we're always in him. We're members of his body. That's how Paul can write things like in the book of 2 Corinthians, when I am weak, then I am strong. He knows that he is permanently connected to Jesus, the head and the body, permanently connected, united with this vital organic connection that we're in Christ. Remind yourself this morning, if all that you're going through, you might feel like, you say, you're an insignificant small member, little toe as it were, but you're connected to the body, you're connected to Jesus. I trust that has encouraged and blessed you this morning, and being to see how this letter of Paul comes together, and going to be excited about continuing to go through this book of Ephesians. Bless you, church.